When she stepped into the gleaming marble lobby of Morgan & Winter's law firm, with her worn jacket and simple clothes, she felt the receptionist's condescending gaze upon her. They would never forget how those looks transformed into horror when they learned that Katherine Wilson was the newly appointed Supreme Court Justice. Morgan & Winter's law firm, located in Manhattan, New York, was one of the city's most prestigious law firms. Situated in a magnificent skyscraper in the heart of Wall Street, the firm served high-profile corporate clients, celebrities, and wealthy families. The building's exterior was covered with mirrored glass, and under the reflected sunlight, the 70-story structure stood like a monument dominating the city. Every morning, limousines and luxury vehicles lined up in front of the building, and lawyers and business people in elegant suits and designer bags strode quickly toward the elevators. Morgan & Winter's client list was almost identical to the Wall Street Journal's Fortune 500 list. Cases were worth millions, sometimes billions of dollars. Every word spoken here, every decision made, every document signed had the potential to affect the global economy. The reception area on the 65th floor was a perfect indicator of power and prestige. Black marble floors, cream-colored walls, minimal but expensive furniture, and strategically placed artwork. Every detail had been carefully chosen to serve an elite client base. The walls displayed headlines from famous cases, photographs with important clients, and portraits of the firm's founding partners. Each lawyer had graduated from prestigious law schools like Harvard, Yale, or Columbia. The firm hired only the brightest, most ambitious, and most well-connected candidates each year. Even a starting lawyer's annual salary was over $200,000, while partners earned millions. At the reception desk sat Victoria Blake, a woman in her early 30s wearing an impeccable black dress with her platinum blonde hair tied in a tight bun. Around her neck was a pearl necklace from Tiffany, and on her wrist, an elegant Cartier watch. She spent a large portion of her monthly salary on luxury items because at Morgan & Winter's, appearance was everything. Her job as the gatekeeper was to determine who could enter Morgan & Winter's and who could not. Working in this position for 5 years, Victoria had become a connoisseur of people. She could tell at a glance who was an important client and who was a waste of time. For Victoria, the world consisted of winners and losers. The winners were those who entered through Morgan & Winter's glass doors, rich, powerful, connected people. The losers were those who remained outside. Victoria remembered that she was once a loser herself. She had grown up in a small apartment in Queens and attended public schools. But she was different now. She had crossed over to the world of winners, or at least she stood at its edge. And to stay there, she had to know who was important and who was not. This Wednesday morning, Victoria was on duty as usual with her perfect makeup, gleaming jewelry, and flawless posture. On her computer, she was checking the day's appointments, answering phones, and monitoring online media. Every news article, tweet, or Instagram post mentioning the firm was on her radar. On the large screens in the lobby, CNN was playing silently. Victoria occasionally looked up to check the news. In recent days, the biggest news was the president's appointment of a new Supreme Court justice. Yesterday evening, a lawyer named Katherine Wilson had been confirmed by the Senate, becoming one of the 9 members of the country's highest court. Victoria had found this news interesting because some of Morgan & Winter's top lawyers had served as advisors in the appointment process. At 9:15, the elevator doors opened, and a woman in her early 50s stepped out. Victoria immediately assessed her. She was wearing a gray suit, but not a luxury design, probably purchased from a department store. The left sleeve of her jacket was slightly worn at the elbow. Her brown hair fell simply to her shoulders, with minimal makeup and small pearl earrings as her only adornment. Her black briefcase looked worn, as if it had been used for years. The woman's posture was straight and confident, but Victoria thought that didn't matter. Based on her appearance, this woman was not a typical Morgan & Winter's client. Victoria made a quick assessment, probably a public defender, or perhaps an ordinary citizen with a small case. In either scenario, she was not the type that Morgan & Winter's would consider worth their attention. The woman approached the reception desk and with a warm smile said, "Good morning." Victoria put on a professional but distant smile. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "Katherine Wilson. I'd like to speak with James Donovan," the woman said in a calm voice. Victoria raised her eyebrows. James Donovan was one of the firm's senior partners, and his busy schedule never had room for random meetings. Extremely selective, Donovan only met with top corporate clients and important connections. This simply dressed woman wasn't even claiming to have an appointment. "Mr. Donovan's calendar is full," Victoria said, glancing at her computer screen. This wasn't entirely true. Donovan had free time until 10:30 that morning, But Victoria didn't feel the need to mention this. "Did you have an appointment?" "No," said Katherine, "but I need to speak with him about an important matter." Victoria inwardly sighed. She often encountered situations like this. Ordinary people wanting to meet with important lawyers. They usually sought help with divorce counseling or small claims, while the firm only handled million-dollar cases. "I'm afraid Mr. Donovan works on an appointment-only basis, and we're booked several weeks in advance," Victoria said. "Is there a specific issue we could help you with? Perhaps I could direct you to an appropriate attorney." There was a subtle condescension in Victoria's tone, as if saying, "Someone like you would be better off going elsewhere." Katherine Wilson's expression remained unchanged. "I see. What about Michael Reynolds? Is he available?" Victoria's discomfort increased. Michael Reynolds was the firm's managing partner, and even less accessible than James Donovan. How did this woman know the names of the firm's two top lawyers? "Mr. Reynolds is also very busy," Victoria said, her impatience growing. "May I ask what this is regarding?" "A personal matter," Katherine said simply. Victoria's suspicions grew. This was probably someone wanting to file a complaint about the firm, or perhaps a journalist. In any case, it was impossible for her to access the executive lawyers. "Miss Wilson, how can I help you?" Victoria asked, her tone becoming more formal. "Which of the firm's services do you need?" Katherine Wilson paused for a moment. "It's regarding Supreme Court appointments." Victoria was now completely suspicious. Yesterday, the president had appointed a new Supreme Court justice, and of course some of Morgan & Winter's lawyers had been indirectly involved in this process. However, this information was not public. This woman must be a journalist. "I don't have the authority to speak on behalf of Morgan & Winters," Victoria said firmly. "If you're here for a press statement, please contact our PR department." Katherine smiled slightly. "I'm not a journalist, Miss Blake," Victoria said coldly. "Victoria Blake. Miss Blake, I'm not looking for a press statement," Katherine said. "I just need to speak with James Donovan, or Michael Reynolds. It's really important." Victoria was starting to get annoyed. This woman was very persistent. "I'm afraid that's not possible. They're both in meetings right now. If you'd like to leave your card, I can have them contact you when they're available." "When will they be available?" Katherine asked. "I can't say," Victoria said, now completely impatient. "I don't control their schedules." This was a complete lie. Victoria knew the schedule of every top lawyer at the firm by heart. James Donovan was at that moment in his office, sipping his coffee while checking his emails. Michael Reynolds had a meeting in half an hour but was currently free. Victoria noticed other employees in the lobby watching her. Young law clerks, assistants, even cleaning staff. They were all following this little drama, and Victoria had to set an example. Maintaining Morgan & Winter's standards was the duty of every gatekeeper. "Perhaps you could leave a note," Victoria suggested, trying to politely get rid of the woman. Katherine Wilson took a piece of paper from her bag. "Yes, that's a good idea. I'll write a note." As she used a pen to write something, she added, "By the way, when do the meetings usually end?" "It varies," Victoria said with a perfunctory answer. She wanted to get rid of this woman as soon as possible. Sometimes they last all day. Katherine folded the note and handed it to Victoria. "Please give this to Mr. Reynolds as soon as possible. It's really urgent." Victoria took the note and placed it on her desk. "Of course," she said, though she knew the note would probably end up in the trash. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" "Actually," said Katherine, "could I have a glass of water? It's been a long morning." Victoria nodded with a barely concealed sigh. "Sure, one moment." Victoria left the reception desk briefly and went to the small kitchen next door. She wanted to return in the blink of an eye, but this gave Katherine Wilson time to look around. Morgan & Winter's lobby was impressive. Daylight poured in through large windows, revealing the city's magnificent view. New York's complex skylines, skyscrapers, bridges, and the distant Hudson River all served as a visual reminder of the world of power and prestige these lawyers served. As Katherine looked around, she noticed something more modest amid the dazzling decor and strategically placed symbols of success: a cleaning lady. An elderly woman was quietly watering the flowers in the corner. Katherine smiled at her, and the woman returned the smile with surprise. Probably very few people notice cleaning staff in such a luxurious environment. When Victoria returned, she brought water in a crystal glass. "Here you are," she said. "Thank you," said Katherine, sipping the water. "This is really an impressive office. Have you worked here long?" 5 years, Victoria said briefly, not wanting to engage in personal conversation. "And have you always been at reception?" Katherine asked, as if genuinely interested. "Yes," said Victoria. "I'm the head receptionist." Katherine nodded. "An important position. You're the face of the firm, aren't you?" As Victoria considered this comment, the phones began to ring. "Excuse me," she said. and answered the call. Morgan and Winter's law firm. How may I help you? The voice on the phone instantly changed Victoria's posture. Yes, Mr. Vice President. Of course, I'll inform Mr. Reynolds immediately. Victoria was stunned by the Vice President's call. Such high-level calls were rare, and usually heralded a major case or important deal. Victoria quickly used her internal phone to call Michael Reynolds' office. Mr. Reynolds, I apologize, but the Vice President is on the line. He wants to speak with you. There was excitement in Reynolds' voice. Connect him immediately, Victoria. As Victoria connected the call, Katherine Wilson continued to quietly drink her water, watching the entire interaction with calm curiosity. She also smiled at a young law assistant sitting at a nearby desk. The assistant looked surprised. Most people didn't pay attention to Victoria like this. After Victoria connected the Vice President to Reynolds, she turned to Katherine. I'm sorry, may we continue? Katherine nodded. Of course, where were we? Oh yes, you were going to pass my note to Mr. Reynolds. Victoria's eyes drifted to the folded note on her desk. Yes, of course. I'll pass it along at the first opportunity. Thank you, said Katherine. Also, perhaps you could recommend somewhere good for lunch in Manhattan. I just moved here and don't know my way around yet. Victoria frowned. Was this woman now asking for tourist information? I'm sorry. I'm busy right now, Ms. Wilson. Perhaps the brochures at reception could help you. Of course, I understand, said Katherine, smiling slightly. I can see you're busy. A few minutes later, the sound of footsteps running from the emergency stairs was heard. Michael Reynolds, in his mid-60s, wearing a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, adjusting his red tie, hurriedly approached the reception. Beside him were James Donovan and other top partners of the firm. Where is the Vice President? Reynolds asked Victoria. Victoria looked confused. Sir, he was on the phone? I just spoke with you. He wasn't on the phone, said Reynolds, frowning. You said he had come to my office. No, I didn't say that, said Victoria, now worried. He was on the phone and I directed the connection to your line. Confusion appeared on Reynolds' face. Victoria, you very clearly said the Vice President is waiting for you in the lobby. Victoria shook her head in horror. No, Mr. Reynolds, I never said such a thing. He was on the phone, I swear. Katherine Wilson put her glass on the reception desk and stood up. I'm sorry, this could be a misunderstanding, she said. Reynolds looked at the woman, clearly not knowing who she was. Who are you? Katherine Wilson, said the woman, extending her hand. I wanted to speak with you, but Ms. Blake told me that wasn't possible. Reynolds frowned. Katherine Wilson. The name hung in the air for a moment. Then Reynolds' eyes suddenly widened. Katherine Wilson? The newly appointed Supreme Court Justice Katherine Wilson? The blood drained from Victoria's face. The glass slipped from her hand to the floor, but no one even noticed. Everyone in the lobby was frozen, from the cleaning lady to the clerks, from assistants to other lawyers. Everyone watched the scene in shock. Yes, Katherine said simply. I was appointed yesterday evening. Victoria's knees began to tremble. She had tried to turn away a Supreme Court justice, one of the 9 most powerful people in the country, like an ordinary visitor, and had even treated her condescendingly. This was the biggest mistake she could make in her career. James Donovan stepped forward, his shocked expression quickly transforming into a professional smile. Justice Wilson, this is a great honor. It's wonderful to welcome you to our firm. Why didn't you let us know in advance? Katherine smiled slightly. It was a bit spontaneous visit. I wanted to see old friends before officially taking office, and it seems this visit has been more enlightening than I expected. Victoria realized in horror Katherine's lie about the Vice President, how her note had been ignored, and the condescending treatment she had received. Her face reddened with shame. Reynolds exchanged a quick look with James Donovan. Both had understood the seriousness of the situation. This was not just a PR disaster, but also an event that could affect the firm's reputation in the highest court. Justice Wilson, please come to my private office, said Reynolds, extending his hand with great respect. Victoria, please bring our best coffee immediately and inform the kitchen staff. I want a special menu prepared for lunch. Victoria's hand was shaking. She almost dropped the phone as she reached for it. Right away, Mr. Reynolds. A note. Actually, Victoria stammered, suddenly remembering something. Justice Wilson had a note. A note, Reynolds asked, frowning. Katherine intervened. It doesn't matter, Mr. Reynolds. I can tell you what I wanted to say in person now. She turned to Victoria. I think I can take that note back now. Victoria handed the note to Katherine with trembling hands. Katherine opened the note and held it so Victoria could see. The note read, I am Katherine Wilson. I was appointed to the Supreme Court yesterday. Michael Reynolds and James Donovan have been my friends for 20 years. Victoria's face grew even paler. Donovan and Reynolds knew Katherine Wilson, probably for years, and Victoria had tried to turn her away because of her simple clothes and plain appearance. "Justice Wilson, please forgive me," Victoria began, but Katherine gently stopped her with a raised hand. "Miss Blake, it's not about apologizing. It's about not judging people by their clothes or appearance. I deliberately dressed simply this morning because in my new position, I wanted to remember how important it is to treat all citizens equally, rich or poor, well-dressed or simple." As she said this, everyone in the lobby listened silently. A clerk, a cleaning lady, a courier, all were witnessing this. Katherine continued, her voice growing stronger now. "The foundation of our legal system is the idea that everyone is equal. However, as I've seen here today, this ideal is often forgotten. People wearing expensive suits are given priority, while people in ordinary clothes are ignored." Victoria bowed her head, wanting to sink into the ground from shame. Katherine was right. Victoria had behaved exactly like that. She had judged people by their clothes, deciding who was important and who wasn't. "In the Supreme Court," Katherine continued, "our most valuable principle is justice. And justice doesn't look at a person's clothes, bank balance, or social status. Justice treats everyone equally, or at least it should." Michael Reynolds cleared his throat. "Justice Wilson, you're absolutely right, and I assure you that at Morgan and Winters, we share these principles. I sincerely apologize for this unfortunate incident. Miss Blake's behavior doesn't reflect our firm's values." Katherine looked at Reynolds. "Doesn't it, Mr. Reynolds? Are you sure? Because many people have reason to believe that such unequal treatment is common in our legal system, even in the most prestigious firms." Reynolds' face reddened. "Of course there may be problems in the system, but the first step is to acknowledge it," said Katherine, "and then to change. I was dismissed here simply because of how I looked. What about ordinary citizens who approach our justice system every day? How do they feel?" James Donovan intervened. "Justice Wilson, you're right, and this is a valuable lesson for all of us. Please, let's go to our office and discuss this in more detail." Katherine thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, let's talk. Because soon, in the Supreme Court, I'll be addressing issues of social justice and equality, and my experience today has strengthened my determination on this matter." Michael Reynolds gave Victoria a sharp look. "Miss Blake, we'll talk later." Then he turned to Katherine. "Justice Wilson, please this way." As Katherine Wilson walked away from reception with Morgan and Winters' executive partners, Victoria Blake knew she had made the biggest mistake of her life. Just because of simple clothes and an ordinary appearance, she had dismissed one of the most powerful legal figures in the country. As Katherine walked down the corridor, she gave a warm smile to the elderly cleaning lady. "Good morning, Maria," she said, noticing the name tag on the woman's collar. "The flowers look beautiful, thank you." Maria smiled in surprise. "Thank you, ma'am. The flowers are my responsibility." Reynolds and Donovan exchanged surprised looks. Few people knew the names of the cleaning staff, let alone spoke to them. As they entered the elevator, Katherine looked at Reynolds. "You know, throughout my career, I've struggled with people judging me by my appearance rather than my achievements. Now I'll be wearing this robe, and perhaps people will finally pay attention to what I say, not how I look." Reynolds nodded. "Justice Wilson, you're absolutely right about this, and today you've taught us an important lesson, that we need to look at the essence of justice rather than its appearance." "Not just justice, Mr. Reynolds," said Katherine as the elevator doors closed. "All people." As the elevator rose to the upper floors, Reynolds and Donovan exchanged worried looks. Both were thinking the same thing. Victoria Blake's behavior could have serious consequences. Belittling someone who was about to become a Supreme Court justice could greatly damage the firm's reputation. "Justice Wilson," said Reynolds, clearing his throat, "I want to apologize to you again. Ms. Blake's behavior is absolutely unacceptable." Katherine tilted her head slightly. "You may condemn Ms. Blake's behavior, Mr. Reynolds, but she was only acting as she had learned. The question that should be asked is, where did she learn this behavior?" Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. He didn't want to admit that such elitism might exist in his firm's culture, but Katherine's gaze told him he couldn't escape. "Perhaps we could make improvements in certain areas," he finally said. "I think we can discuss this topic in more detail in the office," said Katherine, but there was a certainty in her tone. When the elevator reached the 70th floor where Reynolds' private office was located, the doors opened to reveal a luxurious corridor. The walls were covered with dark wood. Hand-woven carpets stretched across the floor. Valuable artworks were displayed at every corner. Reynolds' private office was the largest room in the corner. Huge windows with Manhattan views, antique furniture, and a bookshelf covering an entire wall completed the luxury of the room. Reynolds went to his desk, while Katherine and Donovan sat in leather chairs across from him. Justice Wilson, Reynolds began, allow me to tell you about Morgan and Winter's pro bono work. Last year, our lawyers provided more than 10,000 hours of free legal aid. We served disadvantaged communities and— Katherine politely raised her hand. Mr. Reynolds, I'm aware of your charity work and I appreciate it. However, the reason I'm here today is not to get information about your firm. I came to ask you and Mr. Donovan something. Reynolds and Donovan waited curiously. Before taking the oath as a judge, said Katherine, I wanted to speak with people who have helped me in my legal career. Both of you were important mentors for me, especially early in my career. Now, as I've been appointed to the Supreme Court, I have a question for you. What should I do to make our justice system fairer, more equitable? Reynolds and Donovan looked surprised. They hadn't expected such a question. Donovan was the first to speak. Justice Wilson, consistency and impartiality in your legal jurisprudence are important. Protecting the Constitution and— Katherine raised her hand again. Mr. Donovan, these are law school lessons. I'm asking you a deeper question. After what I experienced in the lobby today, I once again saw that our justice system doesn't treat everyone equally. Even just outward appearance can determine how people are treated in the justice system. How can we change this? There was silence in the office. Reynolds and Donovan were trying to understand the depth of this question. Perhaps, Reynolds finally said, change should start with institutions like ours. Perhaps we need to change the culture of law firms. Katherine nodded. Go on. We usually select our lawyers from certain schools, certain backgrounds, said Reynolds. Perhaps we should increase diversity, not just in terms of race and gender, but also socioeconomic background. And perhaps, Donovan added, we should change how we select our clients. We should move from being focused on money and power to being focused on need and impact. Katherine smiled. Now you're starting to think more deeply. So, what will you do to make this happen? Reynolds and Donovan had begun to understand the deep and potentially uncomfortable transformation that a real commitment to change would require. We'll change Morgan and Winters, Reynolds said decisively. Give me a month, Justice Wilson. I'll come back to you with concrete steps. Katherine nodded. I look forward to that, Mr. Reynolds. And I hope you'll be proud to be part of a firm dedicated to justice and equality, rather than the behavior you showed me this morning. Victoria Blake was gathering her things at the end of the day. Michael Reynolds had called her to his office and had a short but effective conversation. She hadn't been fired, at Justice Wilson's request, but she was no longer at reception. On Monday, she would start working in the firm's pro bono department, helping low-income clients. Victoria felt a weight in her heart. For 5 years, she had reigned like a queen behind the reception. She had classified people by their clothes, the way they spoke, even their shoes. And now, in this hierarchical world she had created and believed in, she had fallen to the lower ranks. As Victoria put the last of her belongings in her box, she took one final look at the reception desk. For years she had worked as a gatekeeper, judging people by their appearance and turning away many simply dressed people like Katherine Wilson. Now she herself had been removed from the world of those important people. Maybe this is a lesson, she thought. Maybe it's time to learn to measure people's worth not by their clothes but by their character. Just then, the cleaning lady Maria approached Victoria from the lobby. Good evening, Miss Blake. Can I help you? Victoria was surprised. For 5 years, Maria had watered the lobby flowers, cleaned the carpets, emptied the trash cans every day. But Victoria had never really looked at her. Now standing before her, with kind eyes and tired but strong hands, was a real person. No thank you, Maria, Victoria said in a soft voice. I'm just gathering my things. I'm moving to a new department on Monday. Oh, did you get a promotion? Maria asked with a smile. Victoria laughed lightly. Not really. I'm moving to the pro bono department. Pro bono? Maria asked curiously. What does that mean? Free legal aid, Victoria explained, for people who can't afford lawyer fees. Maria's face lit up. Oh, that's wonderful. My daughter had a problem with her landlord last year, but we couldn't afford a lawyer. It's too expensive. I wish we had known about such a service. Victoria looked at Maria, really looked at her. This woman was a mother worried about her daughter, just like Victoria's own mother. Suddenly, Victoria remembered her own roots for the first time in a long time. Growing up in a small apartment in Queens, the days when her mother worked 2 jobs, her father's overtime. Maria, said Victoria, if your daughter currently has a legal problem, you can tell me about it. Maybe I can help. Maria was surprised. Really? But I'm just a cleaning lady. Victoria nodded, and I'm just a receptionist. But we all have the same value as humans, don't we? Maria smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you so much, Miss Blake. Maybe I'll visit you on Monday. Victoria, she said, extending her hand. Please call me Victoria. Victoria, Maria repeated, shaking her hand. See you Monday. As Victoria carried her box out of the lobby, she felt good for the first time in a long time. Perhaps this career change wouldn't be a descent but an ascent, perhaps towards something more valuable than money and status. 1 month later, as Victoria Blake helped an elderly woman in a low-income neighborhood understand her lease agreement, she felt for the first time that she was doing truly important work. When the woman hugged her, Victoria realized that true value lay not in expensive suits or luxurious offices, but in the power to positively impact others' lives. When she returned to her office, she found a note on her desk. It was written on elegant paper and said, Victoria Blake. She opened it curiously and read, Dear Miss Blake, I have heard news about your extraordinary effort and dedication in your new position at Morgan & Winters. Your work in the pro bono department is making a difference in many people's lives. No one is perfect, and we all make mistakes, but what defines us is not our mistakes, but what we learn from them. You seem to have learned this lesson, and I commend you for that. Judging people by their character rather than their appearance is an important principle, not just for law, but for life. I hope your experience will inspire others as well. With best wishes, Katherine Wilson, Supreme Court Justice. Victoria's eyes filled with tears as she held the letter. Yes, she had made a big mistake that day, but this mistake had led her to learn the most important lesson of her life. And now she was applying this lesson every day, treating people not according to their clothes or appearance, but according to who they were. 2 years later, Victoria Blake became the director of Morgan & Winters' pro bono department. Under her leadership, the department grew and became one of the firm's most proud units. She might be earning less than her previous salary, but for the first time in her life, she felt she was doing truly valuable work. One day, while watching the Supreme Court deliver a verdict on an important case on television, she saw Katherine Wilson on the screen. Justice Wilson was saying, the fundamental principle of justice is that every human being, whoever they are, however they look, receives equal treatment. We must apply this principle every day, in every court, in every law office, and in every corner of our society. Victoria smiled as she watched the screen. Yes, Justice Wilson was right, and since that day, Victoria Blake had been living by this principle, judging people not by their clothes or appearance, but by their character. And this was the most valuable lesson she had ever learned. What did you take away from this story? Have you ever judged someone based on their clothes or appearance, then realized you were wrong? Perhaps you've experienced something similar. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you liked the video, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments. And remember, true value is not in appearance, but in character. Until our next story, take care of yourself and approach everyone with respect.